Morning, everybody. Very nice to see everybody on this golden Osthmanthus morning. Golden Osthmanthus is from Southern Fujian Province. And so we'll be spending time talking about that. We'll also spend some time trying to understand how come it has that flavor profile. So those would be the two main things that we focus on. In the meantime, in terms of shop news, wonderful shop news that I was able to confirm yesterday because the Chinese confirmed that they received the money. My all-time lack of self-control was in effect this week, where I sent thousands of dollars to China. Now, for all of you, even though lack of self-control is bad when it comes to storytelling and all of that stuff, it's great when it comes to sending money to China, because in return, we're going to get stuff, and it's going to be stuff that you love. So that's payment number one. We have an upcoming payment after we have more samples coming in August. We know for sure we're going to get some samples. I'm sorry, we're going to get some teas out of those samples because we do every year. And so for me to try and tell you right now, yeah, I'm going to regain self-control. I never had it in the first place. So I just admit to all of you, yeah, I'm going to be out of self-control and we're going to order more teas. So that's the really, really good news. This week, a number of you have asked me some questions and I'm working on the answers for all of you. I haven't gotten back to any of you. And this also might seem like, gosh, you know, we talked about this 2 days or 3 days ago, and I still don't have an answer. Not because I don't want to give you an answer, but more because a lot of things happened during the course of the week that kind of slowed me down in terms of getting to all of those. But never fear, I'm working on all of those. And we'll have answers for all of you. Okay, so let's talk about Oolong tea, and let's talk about location, and let's talk about difference. So when you talk cliff teas, that's the Wulong Mountains. So the first two teas in this triumvirate were Rainbow Ice and Enlightenment. And they both came from Northern Fujian Province. Today's tea, Golden Osthmanthus, is a beautiful little gem that comes from Southern Fujian, and it is really a different style of making Wulong tea. So let's go through the history again of what style started so you can get some sense of how this developed. Wulong Mountains, without question, is the birthplace of the Wulong tea style of processing tea leaves. No question about that. No argument. There's not even any alternative evidence anywhere which would suggest that you'd have to make a history check to do any of those, you know, to verify and see which you're going to believe. There's none of that. Second place would be Southern Fujian Province. So Southern Fujian Province, it moved down, the process moved down from the Wulong Mountains, moved south to Anxi, that area. And by the way, if you have your map from last week, Anxi is ANXI. So what's different about Anxi? And what's different about Southern Fujian in general? It's different terroir. The soil's different. The cultivars there are different. The cultural terroir is different. So in the north, in the Wulong Mountains, they eat spicy. In this area, they don't. They eat mild for the most part. So that's some of the main difference. I mean, both areas have hideously large insects. So that's a similarity. But when it comes down to Southern Fujian Province, they are the winners in size of spiders. Largest spiders I've seen anywhere in China. Truly terrifying.
Which is a really good sign, right?
It's a very good sign. Yes, natural, gluten-free, vegan. Oh, wait a minute.
Makes the tea better.
Oh, it makes the tea better. Oh, I knew I was supposed to pull one of those cue cards. So, with different soil, you're going to get a different result. Even if you had the same cultivar in both regions, and there are some identical cultivars in both regions, you're going to get a different end result because sunlight is different, temperature, humidity, all of those things are different. When you think of Northern Fujian Province, think more temperate. When you think of Southern Fujian Province, think subtropical. And then right away, you'll be on the same page. Okay, what about processing? It's Wulong tea after all. I mean, that seems to me when you use a big category name like that, it should be the same process. It is the same framework. So what do I mean by that? The end result is semi-oxidized tea. Something that's oxidized between 10% and 80%. Not red tea, it's Oolong tea. Oolong tea is up there in the 90%. So it's the same end result. So the question you may naturally have is as follows. Are the Wui Mountains more apt to have a more heavily oxidized version of Wulong versus Southern Fujian Province? And the answer would be yes. That doesn't mean, so that we don't get confused here, it doesn't mean that the Wui Mountains don't have lightly oxidized. They just tend towards more medium to heavy oxidation, but that's not for every single varietal. Whereas in the South, most varietals, and again, there are an exception or two, are lightly oxidized. Okay. What else is similar? Well, it's semi-oxidized. Do you still pick the plant? Oh yeah, you still gotta pick the plant. Is the best pick still during the spring? Yes, the best pick is clearly during the spring. Is it like the Wui Mountains where they only do spring picks? Oh no. Here in Southern Fujian Province, they do a bunch of picks. They do summer picks. Now the summer picks is bad tea. It's just not good. But they cover a range of cheap teas, right? You get the very famous, expensive spring picks, and then you get the cheap tea picks of summer. Now, when you're thinking of attractiveness, what sort of attractiveness? I'm talking about flavor attractiveness, aroma attractiveness. The picks during the spring tend to have the most aromatic attractiveness. Oh, smell good. And in those production facilities, you can smell them miles before you get to them. Hey, but what about the fall? Do they have fall picks? Oh, yes. They're famous for fall picks. The fall picks tend to have the heavier, most attractive flavor. So naturally, you're going to ask me the following question. So we understand you always have spring picks. Where are your fall picks? No fall picks in here. Why? Because the fall picks, if the spring picks, you're just starting to sense mosquitoes and other insects, especially flying insects, insects that eat tea leaves. In the beginning of the spring, the volume is not much. By the summer, it's a raging inferno. Fall, it's at the height. If you go out there and there's one little piece of skin exposed, the mosquitoes will find it, and they'll find it in under a minute. And then the plants, if you don't spray them with some sort of poisonous concoction, they'll get all chewed up. So this is something you should understand as a consumer about fall picks. It is true they taste delicious, but there's a sacrifice. And the sacrifice is they're very nearly every single one of them sprayed, have to be in this area because it's so subtropical and you have such a huge volume of insects. So if you ever find yourself accidentally in another tea shop and you're looking at something that's an equivalent to a Southern Fujian tea, and we'll talk about a better definition of that in a minute, you better ask the question, spring pick, fall pick. Now, if the purveyor says, oh, this is a delicious fall pick, and look, the price is less than the spring pick, delicious, less expensive, that sounds really, really attractive. Oh, but wait a minute, where's the fine print? The fine print is spray. That's the fine print, and that's what you have to be aware of. The other reason that sometimes these oolongs get heavily sprayed is from an aesthetic reason. Now, this is particularly true if it's a Taiwanese oolong, because the Taiwanese historically love beauty. They want clean green, no little red spots, no little holes, no discolorations. They want that perfect, that little tea leaf perfect. And so in order to satisfy this consumer demand, what do you have to do? You have to spray. These years, the Taiwanese have advanced and they are trying to produce some of these teas without spraying and still maintain a good clean green. Hard to do. It's expensive to do. So these are all the elements that come into play with Oolong teas. And again, the more subtropical the terroir is, the more you have to worry about this. This was shocking to both the tea master and myself when we first started down in this business, because everywhere we went, everybody claimed, yeah, no, we're not spraying. Then you go out to the tea fields, because we learned early on, you gotta go look at those tea fields. Go out to the tea fields. And this, by the way, why it's important to ask the purveyor if they've seen the tea fields. And you see no spider webs on the top of the bushes. And yet, you know that these areas produce lots, copious amounts of spiders. And there's no webs on the top of the tea leaves. What should I conclude? LCS. That's what you should conclude. The farmer has fallen into the liar, cheater, scammer area. If you see it covered with spider webs and they say they haven't sprayed, you can take that to the bank. You absolutely can take that to the bank. So these are the things we look for. And at the beginning, when we were going through Southern Fujian Province, it was like, oh my God, this is so different from the Wui Mountains. Why, in general, aren't they spraying in the Wui Mountains? First off, all the farmers have come together and agreed, hey, you know what? We get a lot of money for this stuff. And by being able to say not sprayed, we get even more money. And so from an economic standpoint, they already are starting off at a higher level because this is premium tea. They only have one pick a year. They can't wreck the environment. They can't wreck the crop because if they do, they ruin it for everybody. And the government and the farmers agree on this one thing. They absolutely do. Whereas you get to Southern Fujian Province, the conditions of the terroir are different. And so it's harder. You in your heart as a farmer, what would be true to say is, well, I don't want to spray. Now that's true to say. I don't want to spray. And in fact, they usually carve out a very small segment of the fields, which they don't actually spray. That's for home brew. Now, so you might be asking, well, why don't you get some home brew? And the issue with that is, oh, when they spray, do they have an ability to make the air very still? Don't move, air, because I'm going to spray in this area. I don't want you to waft over to the homebrew area. Just don't move. Give me 15 minutes, or whatever number of minutes it is. So these are all the issues, particularly related with fall pick in the area I'm talking about. So this area is famous for Iron Goddess light. I'm sorry, for Iron Goddess, period. Light just refers to the amount of oxidation versus regular versus a little bit heavier. Golden Osthmanthus would belong to the light oxidation. We're talking 10 to 15%, somewhere in that range. And it is a true varietal that has that name because it reminds the Chinese of that area of the aroma of the Osthmanthus lot. So this was nothing fancy in terms of this translation. This is actually a literal translation. And this is what it's called there. Now, we haven't finished separating the two styles, Northern Fujian Province versus Southern Fujian Province in terms of the Wulong process. So they pick, they wither, bring back to the farm, spread the leaves out, let them decrease the amount of moisture. Typically, just like in the Wui Mountains, they want that moisture not to exceed about 65%. And are they using, or what sort of modern scientific gizmo machinery are they using to make sure it's 65%? The answer is they are not. They're using their nose and they're using the hand feel. They know when they pick it up, they know when they smell it, this is where I want it to be. Does that mean it's precisely 65%? Absolutely not. It might be 65%. It might be 64%. It might be 63%. Might even be lower. And each farmer has a different evaluation. But on average, about 65% of moisture is a good rule of thumb to think about from a Western perspective. Yeah, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to reduce the moisture. They want 1/3 or so out. That's a fair statement. All right. So after they do that, that's air. They're usually, unless it's raining. If it's raining, they got to do this stuff inside. They then will bring it inside and they'll make the leaf, so to speak, or make the green. They use these funny expressions, But really what it means is to go through a process, make sure the leaf is pliable enough to actually roll, bruise. And then after they do that, and by the way, these steps should sound familiar. They go ahead and then fry the leaves because you want to stop oxidation at some point, right? And we're going to get back to this frying in a minute because this is for this set of oolongs, the most important thing that's going on in all of these steps. Then they shape the leaves, and in Southern Fujian, getting them into a ball shape is what they want to do, or roughly a ball shape. And then they'll go through a baking process. I said frying the leaves is the most important. Actually, both frying and roasting are very important. Baking at the end. And you're baking in order to stabilize the product. And that's it. It's essentially 6, 7, or 8 steps. Whereas in the, oh, by the way, good. You were about to ask me, how long does it take to perform these 6, 7, or 8 steps? It takes about 24 hours, sometimes 26, sometimes 23, about 24. And at the conclusion of that, is it ready to drink? Well, this is like if you have a still anywhere in the country and you produce an end result that you're going to consume or you're going to sell for consumption. At that point, when it first comes out, is it rough? Or is it mellow and really good? Answer is it's rough. So tea at this time is very rough. I enjoy tasting it because it gives us a chance to tell what it might develop into. So the farmer typically will make a little bit, see where it's at, and see if it needs any other work. Typically it doesn't because they're really good. They get it to this point and then they basically rest it for 30 days and then they sort, package, and put on market. So that's the steps. So within 30 days, 40 at most, it's in the market. The cliff teas, oh my God, pick in April, process a rough processing so that by May 10th or so, they're all done, everything's labeled. Oh, wait a minute, all done with the prelude. Now we do the heavy lifting because we've got usually 1, 2, or 3 roastings over the next 3 months. Oh no, quite a different process. And yet the steps are roughly the same. Timings are different. Attention, what details they pay attention to are different. But at the end of the day, you have to call both oolong teas because they are semi-oxidized. Can't call them green, unoxidized. Can't call them red, heavily oxidized. They're not fermented. You got to call them, they're the same category. Let's put it that way. All right, I got you through the opening steps. We're going to talk a lot more about this. We're going to talk about that area a little bit more. But in the meantime, in order to get you fully relaxed and starting to understand this tea, it is with great pleasure that I am going to ask the tea master to demonstrate the brewing of this tea, and then along with you to actually brew so that we can evaluate this tea. So, Sophie.
Yes.
Good morning，你们好吗？早上好。Yeah, we do, the Wulong. This is it's different, in the yeah, this is in the south in Fujian. But I like it, sometimes I change it, it's a light one. So this is this is really totally traditional, the south in Fujian, the tea ceremony is south. This is the same gongfu cha. Oh, this is called. I like it. This is strong, but we don't use it here. I like it. It's beautiful. This is my cup. Sometimes, yeah. So right now, this is 200 display.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So her tableau, the key things you should notice about her tableau is that she used an Yixing pot. You can use a ceramic pot. It's best in Yixing or a ceramic. If you use glass, you've got to increase the timing by about 30 seconds. That's the steeping time. Oolong teas need to be covered. While so many of the other teas, and you see us demonstrate here, are uncovered, these need heat, and they need concentrated heat in order to bring out the flavors that have been baked on. These flavors, these volatiles have been baked onto the leaves, and in order to get them loosed, you gotta have heat. Heats up the pot. This, by the way, is for Bunfu tea at the small cup level. This is a strainer. It's very beautiful. That's a tea toy over there. You don't have to have any of these things. You do have to have these two things. All right, so she gets out the leaves. There's 6 grams for this. Put them in the Yixing pot. And what you're going to try and do is distribute the heat among the leaves. Smell. Make sure you put what you think you put in it. When you're using a clay pot, it's 2 minutes. If you were using a ceramic, it would be 3 minutes. The pot we're using today is a customer pot. Put 200 degrees water in this preheated pot.
And by customer pot, you mean you're seasoning a pot for a customer?
This one's already seasoned. The pot had come, the
ready.
customer came back to have us re-season. And so we re-seasoned and, oh, yes, 2 minutes. Okay. So let's talk more about this area. Is it a beautiful area? The World Heritage, the Wulong Mountains is a World Heritage Site, totally beautiful. Anxi is a pretty spot, but there are more industries in this area. So they're not heavily polluting industries. So that's the good news. And you have a lot of interesting watershed. So tea is the main product of this area, but you get a sense of it being more scattered. You also get a sense of a few other industries within this area. When this tea is processed, and what we're talking about is everything belonging to this style. So this would be the golden Osthmanthus, the iron goddess, the white orchid that we have here, a few other teas from this area. Buddha's hand they have in this area. That's not a tea we currently carry. Wonderful tea though. They almost all are oxidized at a lighter degree. If you oxidize to a heavier degree, that extends the time of processing. That's okay. The farmers for the right varietal will actually do that. But For these varietals, what they found is that they're best when oxidized lightly. Now, without giving away the aroma and the flavor profile, I will tell you that over the last few years, scientists have analyzed, they've done a careful analysis, and I'll tell you about this analysis a little bit later. Timer has gone off. Separating the tea leaves from the tea liquor. Nice rhythm. Make sure that all the drops are out of there. Oh. And we're taking a look at these leaves. Oh my goodness. Wow. This is not what the leaves look like when they went in the pot. When they went in the pot, they did not look like this. And you'll experience the same thing. Oh my goodness. Something going on with this. And look, the color is so much lighter than when we did rainbow ice in enlightenment. Smells different too. So let's enter the quality arena. Quality arena is where we're going to first see what the mouthfeel is like. And we're going to see what aftertaste, if any, is like. And most importantly, we're going to get ourselves aware and present to think about how it's acting on our body. And remembering there's no right answer for that, for any of us. All of us have our right answer. There isn't a generalized right answer because we're all genetically different. So yours should look somewhat this color. Remember, this is 200 degrees, so that's hot. So we take a 200-degree inhalation. Roll it around our tongue. And think about what we're perceiving. Where is the dryness? I swallowed that. What sort of aftertaste, if any, can I detect? The energetics comes usually a little bit later. Some teas right away. This one probably slightly later, not a lot later, but slightly later. I'm going to take a second inhalation. What's the purpose of second inhalation? It's to verify the first inhalation information. And in addition, it is to start to think about aroma, to start to think about taste, because it's going to take you sometimes, we know from the cliff tea experience, sometimes it'll take several initial inhalations or sips in order to get a complete picture. Now you're going to discover something a little bit different about these teas in terms of that. But again, I'm not going to give that away. You're going to tell me. Okay, it's your turn to brew with the tea master. So make sure your equipment is all set up properly. That your pot is entirely empty and clean.
What does seasoning the pot do and when is reseasoning needed?
I chuckle a little bit at the second part of your question. So let's talk about the first part. So what does seasoning do? Seasoning, especially with the cliff teas, also with these, starts to give an imprint of a flavor, of a favorite flavor in the pot because these are unglazed, so it picks it up. And over time, if you keep brewing the same class of tea, you'll be able to open up the top and smell that tea, and it'll add to the total experience of these teas. That's the first part. The second part of the question has to do under what circumstances you need to reseason. Well, there's two. What if you've seasoned a pot and you really, really love this pot and you really, really love the smell? And by the way, you're watching and doing along with the tea master. You've opened bag number 3. You put the tea leaves in your heated brewing vessel. You shake them in order to distribute the heat. You notice that the leaves are little ball-like leaves, and then you add the water. So again, there's two circumstances under which you reseason. You love the pot, you love what you did the first time, but hey, you've outgrown that. Maybe the first time around, it was like, hey, I have to have my iron glass light. And so for maybe 5, 6, 7 years, you do that. And then all of a sudden, you grow up. Oh, wait a minute. That was the wrong turn. You make a different decision about what you love. You love the Cliff Teas all of a sudden. Now, ordinarily, you wouldn't want to brew a Cliff Tea in a very heavily seasoned iron goggets light pot. So what you would need to do is to reseason. The reseasoning, when properly done, is complicated. It's not as much complicated as you've got to go through a bunch of steps. And most of you probably aren't set up to go through those steps. And we are set up to go through those steps, and we understand what they are. Second reason for doing this to a pot, reseasoning a pot, is a mistake has occurred. A mistake. I didn't drop the pot. There are other types of mistakes. For example, the pot might have accidentally, through good intentions, ended up in a dishwasher. And there were very good intentions. Somebody in the house said, oh, this thing's dirty. Hey, let me be a good citizen and clean this thing. Good intentions that result in a horrible argument. Don't ever touch my teapot again. It starts out that way. Because as soon as you get any foreign smells in the teapot, every time you use it, you're reminded of the mistake that got you to this point.
And who made the mistake?
And who made the mistake and why you are so unhappy. Yes, all of these reminders. So this is another type of tea emergency. This is actually a teapot emergency where you bring it in and we help resolve the situation. All right, your timer has gone off. You're going to separate in tea rhythm that is steady, not jerky, not in a hurry, very steady, separating the tea leaves from the tea liquor. And you're going to make sure you pour everything out because you don't want leaves left over. You don't want water left over. If you have water left over in the pot, the leaves will continue to brew. If you have leaves in the pot and you're trying to do a new steeping, you have old leaf results mixed in with new leaf results. And that's not so pretty. So again, it should look this color. All right. And for those of you who want to pour your tea leaves out, you probably don't want to do that. But you certainly want to look at them so that you see that they've all opened up hugely. When you put in that 6 grams before, it looked like such a little bit. When you open the pot, several things happen right away. The leaves are puffed up in the pot. They've opened up. The aroma has puffed up. Everything is full of energy. All right, so you all enter the tea leaf, not the tea leaf, the tea quality arena, and you make your evaluations. Be careful, this is 200 degree. And while you're doing that, let me continue to talk about the, what was I on before? I was on the,
We had talked about the difference in the number of steps in processing time, some similarity to steps. I think we had left off at wanting more explanation about maybe what that different set of steps are for Weed Mountains or a different focal point.
okay. Good. And actually, let me shift that a little bit, because what I really want to do is go ahead and talk to you about the evaluation techniques that are used in contests, because this is going to be important to understand. And it'll be important to understand, particularly for how we make decisions on how to bring tea here. We follow the same principles that are used in national contests in China between same type of tea, same varietal of tea, and which one is the best. How do you check that? Is it, do you look at the farmer first? No, that's not what you do. You have a standard for making that judgment. And so the standard for cliff teas is to bring the water to boiling, use about a 6 to 8 ounce ceramic cup, put the tea leaves in there, put in the boiling water, and let it steep for 3 minutes. Why do they do this? And this seems so counterintuitive. Oh no, you're oversteeping. Horrible. Oh no, that's not what's happening. Hear what they're trying to do. Instead of find the qualities, we always focus on the qualities, and in a minute you'll see why. Here, what they're trying to do is expose the defects. Because if this tea is not well made, the defects become obvious under this type of stress. And by the way, one of you is going to ask me the following question. So let's get this question out of the way. Is this the same technique you would use with, say, the same varietals of dragon oil? Line them up like that, use 200, use boiling water, 3 minutes. No, by style of tea, different contest rules exist. This is the most stressed a tea leaf will ever become, but that's because of this stock. You have to stress it like this in order to get those defects to come to the surface. Yes.
Some feedback from tea tasters. The change in these leaves from dry to after, or after one brewing, changing these leaves from dry to after one brewing just blows her away.
Change in leaves from drying to after brewing just surprised the heck out of this particular participant. It's always surprising the first time around. First time we saw this over 20 years ago, it was like, holy cow. It was almost like magic occurred in that cup.
Another participant says the warmed and steeped leaves had a floral / mineral scent, but the tea liquor has a scent that reminds me of a sweet apple butter.
Oh, love this comment. So floral, minerally scent of the wet leaves, but hey, when this participant tasted it, it was like an apple butter, right?
Yeah.
Apple butter. I love this comment on so many different levels. And in a minute, you'll understand why. I'm not gonna tell you exactly why, but this hits so many points right away. And remember, when I talked about processing, it was the baking, in particular, temperature of the baking, which brings out these particular flavors. And I'll go through that temperature range with you so you know what it is. Yeah.
Another participant says she agrees with the floral mineral scent of the steeped leaves, and in addition to her, the dry leaves have a light malty vegetal scent. Dry leaves.
Dry leaves had a light, malty vegetal scent. Agrees with the sweet minerality of the wet leaves, this particular participant does, but there's that dry maltiness in the dried leaves. There's a maltiness in the dried leaves
Maltiness in the vegetality.
and a vegetality. This is another excellent, outstanding comment, because all of you are getting down to details. Tea at its finest, when you are in tea rhythm, you are at that detail level. And these details, particularly picking out that vegetalness at that tea leaf, dried tea leaf stage, is just absolutely brilliant. And who uses these details? Tea judges. In China, when they have these competitions, the way you all are commenting now is judge-like. You have gotten to that state where you're talking about details. And when you understand the details, you never make a mistake about the evaluation of the tea. It's fabulous, fabulous to hear you, all of you, coming at it from this direction. Yes.
Another participant says the dry leaves for her had a much greener look and appeared to be small and tightly rolled with a light roasted scent. And something else she can't quite identify, but then the wet leaves are huge, whole, and green. Definitely a floral sweetness comes through once brewed.
Wet leaves, huge floral sweetness and whole leaves. Dry leaves, all in this tight ball. Yeah, they're greenish, but there's no indication of the magic that's going to come up in that huge. You don't get that floral or that sweetness, and you don't get the enormity of the aroma until you apply the brewing to it. It just, and that's what's astounding about the Southern Fujian teas. And by the way, the Taiwanese, many of the Taiwanese teas have a similar quality, because many of those, especially the higher mountain ones, are rolled in that ball. When the leaves open, you get this huge leaf. You also see that I did not lie, because you see a redness around the edges. What does that redness mean? Oh, yes, I should be showing you instead of just looking. What does that redness mean? That means that, remember I told you they shook them and bruised the leaves? I wasn't kidding. They actually did that. And you have proof.
Participant says there's a very subtle sweetness. Is this for the tea liquor, Aggie? A very subtle sweetness with hints of roastiness.
A subtle sweetness with hints of roastiness. I assume that this is for the tea liquor itself. And a great call on that, because these are roasted. And so at the end of the day, even though floralness, sweetness comes to you and demands your attention, you cannot ignore me. Both the sweetness and the floralness say. That roastiness says, don't worry, by the time they get halfway down the cup, they'll remember me.
Another participant says for her, it's very juicy with flavors reaching the back of her tongue. Astringency appears lightly mid top of tongue. Yeah, lightly in the middle of the top of her tongue.
Astringency. Lightly middle and the top of her mouth or tongue. And then the
Flavors.
which flavors?
Juicy.
Juicy. Yes, yeah, you captured a comment, which is very important. Juicy flavors. So we have floral, we have apple butter, we have sweet, we have roasty, we have juicy. hey, this lightly oxidized tea leaf is really giving it up.
And interesting, she shared a little more information about how the astringency didn't actually even really show up until mid-cup for her.
Oh, great comment. So astringency isn't the primary attribute on this participant's tongue until mid-cup. And that's a really good catch, because what happens is as you keep sipping this, it reinforces astringency. But unlike the cliff teas, which generally lead with astringency, hey, I'm a cliff tea, and I want you to know that and have that astringency and minerality. This has astringency, but it's a buildup. And one of you earlier said, in the aroma, you caught the minerality. And that's a great catch, because there is minerality that disappears essentially, particularly as you compare it to Enlightenment and Rainbow Ice. I mean, even though those were lightly mineral, this makes those seem like heavily mineral. This is like no minerality except in the aroma of the leaves. Yes.
The name of this tea made one of the participants think she'd had it before, but it was actually a red tea, omnipresent. And she's wondering, is there any similarity other than the scent of the Osthmanthus flowers?
Love the fact that you drew this comparison to omnipresent. The similarity is in the aroma and in taste, but it stops there because it's the Osthmanthus which is drawing that comparison. In the red tea, you're getting a completely different energetic. You're also getting more appreciation right away in the mouth and in the aftertaste of what the tea is and omnipresent. This, it's so hot, you can't do that. It's step by step by step by step. And it builds up. And as that Osthmanthus builds up, then it makes you think, oh my God, I've had something like this before. Omnipresent, but it wasn't exactly like this because the base is different. But great catch on that, very great catch. All right. So I was talking about testing for defects, and in contests, that's what they do. And so before we buy, we always, for the Wulong teas, test for defects, because we want to know. We don't want you to come back and say, hey, I took this home. You sold me defects. There's defects in this. I went home and tested for it. No. And that's why here, we never teach the test for defects, because we already did it. And do you think we bring back effective tea? The answer would be no. We have already determined the range of what that tea is going to be. And that's because we've tested for defects, and that's what they do at the national level when they're in contests. So let's get to that roasting temperature before I forget, because that's really important. And it influences items that you identified in this tea. And there's a reason that you identified them. So let's talk about that for a minute. So scientists have gone in and analyzed, they've used professional judges and tea tasters to give evaluations. And here's what they've concluded. At a lower roasting temperature, and what does lower here mean? Around 230 degrees. It doesn't matter whether you roast an hour, 3 hours, or 5 hours. This principle is going to be the same. You're going to get a lighter floral aroma. You'll get sweetness, and you will not get hardly any astringency. Now, what if you want a fruitiness instead of a florality? When have you talked about apple cider? That's a fruitiness, isn't it? How do you do that? Is there a way? Let me look in the manual, in the farmer's. Hey, there is. If I roast it for a short time, could be as long as an hour, but usually more like 30 or 40 minutes. At 260, the fruity aspect is the leading aspect, not the floral aspect. And the sweetness, though still there, backs off a little bit. So you all are determining and have determined and have reported back details about this tea. The details are all matched to details in processing of the tea. If you don't take account of these details, I mean, you don't have to, I mean, you can just enjoy the tea. But when you're in tea rhythm, when you take account of these details, you appreciate it so much more. That's really important. All right, I'm going to give you a couple more items about this area because this area is fascinating. Anshi, there is one of the largest covered tea markets in the world in this area. And the first time we went to this thing, more than 20 years ago, you can see it from far away. And it's just this flat piece with, you know, booth after booth after booth. And it's brick and mortar booths. So you have probably about 200 different farmers who maintain a presence year round. And why do they do this? And is this symbolic of how they do markets in every tea town in China? So in Anxi, because it's the largest and because people from Fujian have to have their tea, and there are so many tea producers in Fujian, they keep this maintained all year round. And they stock it usually with low-level people, except during picking season. During picking season, they got high-level people there because they know they're going to make some high-level decisions selling tea. And it looks like, you remember 2 or 3 months ago when you came in the shop and there were boxes everywhere, and you look in the back and boxes stacked to the ceiling. Well, all of these booths look like that. You can barely get in to sit in the chairs in front of the table. That's how they look, and that's how they do business. And that's how we were in the beginning able to connect with so many farmers so fast. They were all in one location. And they tell you, oh, my farm is up this road, and I'll come and get you because you'll have a hard time finding the road. You just give me a call, I'll come and get you. And all of these farmers were welcoming. Tells you something about pace also. Who tells you when you go to a farmer's market, oh, you should come to my strawberry farm? You know what? I'll come and get you and drive you up to the store. Are you kidding me? Nobody here does that, but it's a different rhythm here. In China, especially in this area, it's another rhythm. In Yunnan, it's that same rhythm. You meet a farmer in a township. Hey, you're into tea? I've got the best tea trees in the world, and I can prove it to you. Come up to my farm. I'll send somebody down. Or better yet, just grab your stuff right now and we'll go on right on up. How long is the trip? Oh, it's 7 or 8 hours, but don't worry. When you get up there, we have a place for you to sleep if you want. So it's that's the hustle they have with business. That's the culture of tea business in that area. So if you go to, say, the Dragon Well area, the culture is different. Why? Instead, what you find is all these wealthy people driving in their 8-seater Mercedes, lounges, limousines, the other fancy cars, they pull up in front of a farm. And the farmer knows as soon as one of these pulls up, oh, they want to try some tea. And they get out, serve some tea. So it's a different rhythm. And the rhythm would be characterized as famous versus not as famous. So the famous, where the roads are better, the houses are bigger, easier to find farms, closer to cities, people go to those. Then the less famous, but even better sometimes tea, people go to those, but not as many. And you gotta know people when you go there. You can't just show up unless you speak Chinese and verbally wrestle somebody down. And I need to go to a place where they grow teachers. Oh, no problem. I'll take you up there. Yeah.
A participant is commenting on the tea. He says, I find this tea is relaxing and that it could relieve the tightest vice grip of tension. It seems like one good to serve during tense negotiations to ease the atmosphere.
That is a really interesting comment. So this particular participant finds this relaxing, calming, thinks that this would be a great tea to serve during a tense negotiation to get everybody, if Vladdy and Zelensky were saying, oh, wait a minute, this is not a political mess. My mistake. So, oh, and the TV producer says it might take more than that. Yeah, that too.
How about enlightenment? Didn't we have that last night?
Upgrade, enlightenment for that. So the point here being that this is a relaxing tea. It's an easy tea to understand. It doesn't take the same level of attention that the cliff teas do. It's really, really good without being difficult. And so from that perspective, for beginners, for tea beginners, when you're trying to help somebody start to understand the Wulong journey, starting them out in this place is not a bad place because it's really good. And I keep telling everybody, and this is a really clear reminder of this principle. Does price equate directly to taste? The answer is no. This is the least expensive tea in our shop, and yet it's got $1 million taste. And price again really relates to famousness of the tea and how much there really is of it. So this is a supply and demand situation. We don't just think up a price out of our heads. We actually try and get the best available deals, but we also always match it up with supremely great flavor. All right, we've come to the end of today's session. Golden Osthmanthus, your commentary, your understanding of this tea was very brilliant, was very consistent, from the apple butter to the sweet floralness to the roastiness, the vegetality in the dry leaves to the puffiness of the leaves as they opened up. And by the way, this is the clearest example of why the first time around, oh, if you're doing it in a clay pot, only 2 minutes. The next time around, only 1 minute, because the leaves are already open. You don't need to open the leaves. In the beginning, you need to open the leaves. Next week, the next series starts, and we have 3 different styles of tea in the next series. And we're going to start off with the yellow tea the next one called Poise. So if you don't have the package, go get the package. Look forward to seeing everybody this next week. Want you all to have a very safe and happy week intervening, and we'll see you next week. You take care now. Bye-bye.